So Prime Minister Andrew Holness wants Opposition Leader Mark Golding to meet with Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister Delroy Chuck to start the talks about constitutional reform. Mr. Golding said no. Problems already. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Thanks so much for joining me. Time for tea. So remember, the Prime Minister had said he wanted to work with the opposition to, get something going on constitutional reform. So the Prime Minister now reaches out to start the discussions about constitutional reform and says the opposition leader, Mark Golding, should meet with the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Delroy Chuck, to start those discussions. Mr. Golding said, no. The two are with meat. Now, a little context here. When the shadow cabinet was announced, we heard Mr. Golding had taken on the portfolio of constitutional affairs. So on the face of it, this would look like minister and shadow minister on a portfolio meeting together. Now, in the letter that the opposition leader wrote back to the Prime Minister, he said he accepts the only route to success in the constitutional reform effort is through authentic collaboration as demonstrated by former political leaders. For example, he said in opening the debate on the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms in 2010, then Prime Minister Bruce Golding outlined the imperative of partnering together in the reform process. Similarly, he said former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson wrote to you, that's Dr. Holness, and I, that's Mr. Golding, saying the solution to constitutional reform requires unity of purpose and action transcending partisan boundaries. And he says in moving from colonial status to political independence, there was constant interaction between Norman Manley and Alexander Bustamante, as there was between P.J. Patterson and Edward Seaga during the constitutional reform undertakings in the 1990s. So he said, accordingly, is it to them as the leaders of Jamaica's two major political parties who have to establish a basis for the partnership if the reform process is not to become another exercise in futility. So he says he was expecting an invitation to meet with the PM. Now, I interviewed on radio, on my radio program Beyond the Headlines on Radio Jamaica, opposition Member of Parliament Tony Hilton. Now, Mr. Hilton had represented the opposition on the Constitutional Reform Committee. And let me digress for a moment to say there are some words that we in the media like to pull out. So if anything goes wrong, if there's an accident of any kind, you're going to hear the words ill-fated. So let me say Mr. Hilton represented the opposition on the ill-fated Constitutional Reform Committee. And I'll soon tell you why I call it that. Jamaican people say, when I did not call it duppy. Well, I'm calling the Constitutional Reform Committee duppy. If it's not dead, it should be. We should take it around the back and put it out of its misery and put all of us out of our misery. But having said that, as I said, I spoke to Tony Hilton and asked him why the opposition leader said he wouldn't meet with the Justice Minister.
I know some people looked at it and said, but Mr. Golding has assumed portfolio responsibility for constitutional affairs. He's been asked to meet with the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. What's the problem?
In one sense, I hope this is just a storm in a teacup because there is the need for a partnership. There is the need for the discussion to restart and for us to get on with the work that needs to be done. As the leader of opposition says, he embraced the offer, the position the Prime Minister announced at his inauguration, but felt that the discussion must be elevated and that for there to be clarity at the outset so that we don't have these fits and starts and these questions about the commitments of both sides to this process.
So here we are. Look, I don't think the opposition leader's position is unreasonable. He's saying, look, the leaders have to talk first, the leaders have to meet and agree on what they have to agree on and talk about what they're supposed to talk about. Then the others now can take the issue and run with it. You can't look at Mr. Golding as just any other shadow cabinet minister. He's a leader of the opposition. Duh. And it's actually kind of disrespectful to be telling him to meet with a cabinet minister, right? His taking on the constitutional affairs portfolio was, I think, a signal to say the opposition is taking this thing seriously. The position Mr. Golding is taking, by the way, is not unusual in either government or politics. So, for instance, if we're having a cabinet minister on either my radio or a TV program, they'll ask who will they be on with, and they will tell you point blank they won't come on with somebody they see as being very junior to them. Now, that happens all the time. also, if you're planning a meeting and you want to make sure you can actually make progress, make some decisions, people like to meet with people of equal powerful status and rank, because, on some issues it's a waste of time talking to people at lower ranks because they can't necessarily make certain types of decisions. So, I didn't think this was a great first move by the Prime Minister, and as I said, it kind of smacks of disrespect to the opposition leader. So let's see what happens now. Because whatever happens from here, they need to scratch that whole constitutional reform process and start again from scratch. Here's why I said that. The Constitutional Reform Committee was chaired by the then Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Ford. You can't have a committee like that chaired by a politician. It has to be a well-respected, non-partisan local expert, and we have quite a few people around that could fit that bill. Now, the makeup of the committee was a big problem. Lawyer upon top of lawyer upon top of lawyer, as if nobody else could talk about constitutional reform. A constitution is supposed to set out what people want for the country, the people's aspirations for the country. Sure, lawyers have an important role to play, but they're not the only people who matter. It's not about lawyers talking legal talk like say nobody can understand what a constitution is or what they want it to do, right? Remember, if that is a starting point, the process is doomed from the start. Remember, this is how we got the Constitution. We now have the 1962 Independence Constitution. A few men locked up in a room and decided what they wanted for the country. Constitutional scholar Simeon McIntosh called it a few men meeting in secret conclave. There weren't any public meetings, weren't any town halls, nothing like that. There were some submissions taken, but the kind of public conversation, educating the population about the issue, and then getting their views, that did not happen. We always have to remember that. The people, broadly speaking, were locked out of the making of the 1962 Constitution, and we have to make sure that does not happen again. I'm not saying this latest attempt at constitutional reform was as bad as what happened in 1962. It wasn't, but neither was it as inclusive as it should have been, and that was said right from the start, and they never pay people no mind. So the church was saying, what about them? And by the way, you cannot have one representative who is supposed to represent the church on very controversial issues, because the church is a very broad umbrella that covers and captures a wide variety of views, especially when it comes on to controversial issues. Yeah, that civil society rep, where civil society say never represent them. So yeah, whole heap of problems in the makeup of the committee right from the get-go. 3, they announced a decision on what the local head of state would look like even before there had been one comment from the public on this.
We will be abolishing the constitutional monarchy as our form of government, and we will be removing the British monarch from our government. When that is done, it's to be replaced by a formal head of state for the Republic of Jamaica, a president. So let me state that again. Once we have abolished the monarchy from our makeup, the makeup of our form of government, it will be replaced by the office of President of the Republic of Jamaica. And the President of the Republic of Jamaica is to be a separate office from the head. The President of the Republic of Jamaica will be the formal head of state of the Republic of Jamaica, separate from the head of government of the Republic of Jamaica, President and Prime Minister. President as head of state, Prime Minister as head of government.
That was the single biggest problem, because it made it look as if everything that happened after that was a waste of time, as if they had already made up their mind what they wanted, what the conclusion was going to be, and all the so-called consultation after that couldn't help but look like a face card to cover up a decision that had already been made. Number 4. The refusal, absolute refusal, to hold public meetings that people could watch live, say for instance on YouTube. How we had to fight to get minutes of the meetings, and by the way, minutes would not have been as important if we had been able to watch live. The response when people asked for live coverage was that people wanted to speak freely without necessarily having to censor themselves. Look, the nature of these committee meetings means that we need to be able to hear everything that was being said. So The refusal to have the public watch these meetings live was another big no-no. 5. The town halls, the public meetings, when they were held, they were badly planned, they were badly executed. Just leave it at that. Look, I'm not even going to go any further, all right? What's done is done, but let's make sure it is done. Let's start over and do it again properly. Now, I'm not saying that, for instance, the report that came out of the Constitutional Reform Committee should be thrown in the trash. That's not what I'm saying. There's a lot of useful information in there that can help to inform future discussions. But we do need to have those future discussions, all right? The process itself has to start over. So what do you think? Comment below, all right? Remember, keep it civil. Like the video. Share it with somebody who might be interested, and subscribe to the channel if you are not yet a subscriber. Also, click the notification bell so you know anytime I drop a new video. I'm Dion. Thank you so much for watching. Going back to my tea.